This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Israeli authorities designated the last days of the military maneuvers to prepare for weapons of mass destruction attacks, such as missiles carrying unconventional or chemical warheads.
The central military maneuvers took place in Afula in northern Israel and Bnei Barid in the center of the country. The training included mock attacks of missiles on residential areas, which can potentially cause a large number of casualties.
The last day of the Israeli military maneuvers was designated to the worst possible scenario of any future war. The city of Afula, north of Nazareth, was used as a staging area. A mock attack was acted out where an unconventional missile carrying chemical warhead lands in a residential area, killing and injuring dozens. The training included rescue operations, quick evacuation plans, and cleaning up operations by special forces of the location where the missiles landed. Training was also carried out in hospitals which declared the highest state of alert to provide medical care for the injured, who were separated based on the level of their injuries.
We have learned important lessons. The trainings went very well. The medical teams have a high level of professionalism. The Interior Ministry and the Health Ministry have been organizing trainings in all of the Israeli hospitals. We are very satisfied with our capabilities and that we can provide for Israeli citizens.
The 5-day training is the largest in the history of Israel. It was conducted in a way to learn lessons from the latest war on Lebanon. It was also conducted to test the capabilities of the internal fronts in dealing with different scenarios. The military maneuvers, which included a training for coordination between security forces and the emergency and civil defense, was viewed by neighboring countries as a preparation for a new war. Israel, however, insisted that these maneuvers are not a threat to anyone.
Israel has no intentions to attack any country. We want peace with all countries in the region. We will not launch a war unless we are attacked.
خلاصة التدريب حسب التقييم الأولي أن إسرائيل مستعدة لكافة الاحتمالات.
According to an initial evaluation, the military maneuvers show that Israel is ready for all possibilities and that now it is much more ready than it was during the latest war on Lebanon.
بياسكر الجزيرة مدينة العفولة.
الترقب يخيم على قطاع غزة اليوم. حالة من التوتر.
Gaza is in a state of high alert and tension today in anticipation of a brutal Israeli military operation. According to Israel's Deputy Defense Minister, Matan Bilnai, they want to settle the score with Hamas. This is in response to yesterday's events, which were the most vicious in several weeks. In an operation called Breaking the Siege, members from the Palestinian resistance attacked the Israeli Nahal Oz crossing. 2 Israeli civilians were killed and 2 others were injured. 2 of the attackers were also martyred. The Israeli government quickly responded with a violent attack on the Shuja'iyya neighborhood in eastern Gaza. As of today, there are 7 additional Palestinians who have been martyred.
The Palestinian resistance quickly challenged the Israeli occupation forces at the commerce crossing Nahal Oz in eastern Gaza. Resistance members stormed the crossing and killed 2 Israelis.
This heroic operation is a confirmation that we will continue on the path of resistance and jihad until all of Palestine is liberated from the river to the sea.
The latest Palestinian operation was given the name Breaking the Siege. Its aim was to kidnap soldiers. It did not achieve its aim, but it punctured the wall of the Israeli defense, which responded without restraint. Israeli planes blasted 2 cars belonging to the resistance, leaving deaths and injuries behind, and tank shells killed 3 children and injured several others. Eastern Gaza was not where it began. Rather, the occupation paid the price for an attack they launched in the southern part of Gaza. An Israeli soldier was killed after armed clashes between members of the Qassam Brigade with a special Israeli force, which had infiltrated into the Karara area east of Han Yunis.
The Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam brigades take full and direct responsibility for this heroic operation, from which the cowardly Zionists fled.
It's not unlikely for the occupation forces to commit new massacres to reclaim their dignity, especially after their leaders acknowledged that the resistance parties had broken through the military's safety lines, causing damage before returning to where they came from. Zuhair Sakala, Dubai TV, Gaza.
The tension in Gaza casts a dark shadow over Gaza's border with Egypt. Egypt is in a state of full alert after Cairo's stern response to threats made by Hamas to repeat a breach of the border to break the siege on Gaza. Egypt deployed more than 1,200 members of security across the border, in addition to expediting the rebuilding of the border wall between the 2 sides. The Egyptian government also sent severe warnings about the repercussions of any breach to the sanctity of its border.
Talks on the final status of Jerusalem will be delayed by 5 years, this according to Palestinian sources. They told Ynet today that discussions between Israeli and Palestinian officials are now focusing on a temporary arrangement whereby the Palestinian Authority will be granted partial municipal authority in Jerusalem. According to the report, Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni and Palestinian negotiator Ahmed Correa have discussed possible arrangements during their meeting, but there's been no Israeli confirmation.
Well, joining us now to discuss the Jerusalem talks and other pressing issues is the Foreign Ministry spokesman, Aryeh Mekel. Aryeh, thanks for coming in. Mr. Mekel, can you confirm that talks towards reaching final status agreements have been taking place, but have now been put on hold for 5 years?
This is highly speculative. I can tell you that this report was already denied today by both Abu Ala and Saib Arikat, and I know these 2 gentlemen can be trusted.
Is it true that an interim solution is trying to be worked out or negotiated at this point?
Now, our positions are clear. We said that we will discuss all the core issues, and we are trying to solve the Israeli-Palestinian dispute once and for all, which means that we have to eventually get to all the problems and try to solve them, at least at this point, have a document, some agreement, but we don't want to be in a situation that we have to compromise twice, if you know what I mean. I mean, we'll have to compromise to reach these agreements. You want to do it once, solve the problem, and hopefully, you know, live in peace afterwards.
Mr. Mekel, yesterday's murderous attack at Nahal Oz, it's taken a terrorist group to a new level of cynicism. We've been under great amount of criticism, of course, from all sorts of international sources that we're not supplying energy to Gaza, we're holding back. And then at the same time, they commit this sort of attack at a facility that's transferring fuel into the Gaza Strip. Is Israel attempting to point out the irony in that and the cynicism to the world community?
Yes, in our, what we call hasbara, in our PR campaign, if you will, this is exactly our main point, to show who we're dealing with. They don't care. I mean, they sacrifice the well-being of their own people in order to kill some Jews. This is their goal. So obviously we are pointing it out, and there will be real suffering. I mean, our policy didn't change. We want to continue and provide supplies for Gaza because we are not interested. We don't want the humanitarian crisis. But obviously now there will be difficulties with the supply of oil. This is the only terminal which has the facilities to even enable oil to enter. So who will suffer from the hardships? The regular citizens of Gaza.
3 smaller Islamic terror groups claimed responsibility for yesterday's murderous attack at Nahal Oz. But in fact, isn't the Hamas-run Gaza Strip, isn't Hamas really in charge? Aren't they the ones responsible for this?
This is exactly our opinion. We stressed in all our statements and messages that we hold Hamas responsible for everything that is happening. We don't actually care which organization took responsibility. It's meaningless. They're playing games. Hamas is in control. If they wanted to stop it, they would stop it. Since they didn't, they are responsible. And quite frankly, as the defense minister said today, and I can repeat it, Hamas will bear the consequences.
One last quick question, if you will. Sakia Negbi pointed out that there's no chance of a truce between Israel and we'll have to find a military solution in Gaza. Do you agree with that assessment?
As a government official, we never react to what politicians say, and that's not our job, really.
Aryeh Mekel, spokesman for the Foreign Ministry, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, former U.S. President Jimmy Carter plans to meet with Hamas terror boss Khalid Mashal in Damascus next week. This according to the Fox News network. Carter is currently in Nepal monitoring parliamentary elections taking place today in the Himalayan nation. His planned powwow with the Hamas chief has been sharply criticized. Former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations John Bolton called the trip ill-timed and ill-advised. And the Republican Jewish coalition urged the three U.S. presidential candidates, John McCain, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama, to object to the Carter-Mashal meeting, saying it would be a violation of U.S. law for an American official to hold talks with the leader of a recognized terror group.
Deir
Yassin and other massacres, which were committed by Zionist gangs, were not mere individual or exceptional events. Rather, they were an original part of a consistent pattern, which reflects the Zionist vision of reality and history.
The Zionist entity is proud and boasts among the Deir Yassin massacre and honors the gangs, which carried the massacre by naming streets after them in their settlements, which were built on the blood and body parts of Palestinians.
صحيح أن الذاكرة العربية مليئة بالأحداث المأساوية التي ارتكبها.
It is true that Arab memories are filled with tragic events, which the Zionists committed and continue to commit every day. However, today, the international community's memory is in a deep sleep. We must recall the massacre of Deir Yassin to awaken the memory of those who are preparing to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the establishment of the Zionist entity. This entity, which was established through killing, butchery, burning, and displacing millions of Palestinians who fell victims to this entity and to the international silence over the Zionist crimes. What distinguishes the Deir Yassin massacre is that it represents the start of events, which placed Palestinians on the path of a tragic fate. Deir Yassin is a humble village northwest of occupied Jerusalem. On April 9, 1948, the village's residents woke up in a panic to the sounds of bombs, landmines, automatic guns, and the buzz of bullets. They had a date with a Palestinian catastrophe with 250 to 360 sacrificed victims. Most of them were women, the elderly, and children. The Deir Yassin massacre was committed by Zionist gangs. Two Zionist gangs, the Irgun and the Stern, committed the massacre in cold blood under the cover of the night. The Zionists chronicled the events themselves so that their black history would be recorded by their black hands, which are mixed with the blood of Palestinians and their excessive desire to kill, rape, and mutilate bodies. They do not deny that they did not even spare pregnant women in this massacre. 60 years in the massacres, slaughters, burnings, displacement, starvation, sieges, and settlements are all one title for one thief, whose name is the Zionist entity. It started out with the terrorism of gangs, which was transformed into systematic state-sponsored terrorism, whose aim is to strike at the Arab-Palestinian identity and its sanctuaries.
هدفه ضرب الهوية الفلسطينية العربية وضرب مقدساتها.
Well, Well, we've heard from General Petraeus and Ambassador Crocker, and we'll be hearing later from President George Bush. But there is a lot of talk on Iraq, and still here, day-to-day life is a struggle. Just one example is that people who used to live peacefully side by side, regardless of their background, are now divided. Baghdad has a huge set of blast walls divided along sectarian lines in an attempt to control the violence that's been ripping through this country. James has been looking at the impact that that's had.
From the air, Baghdad looks much as it always has. This is one of the most populous cities in the Middle East, home to more than 6 million people. But once you get on the ground, you see that the city has been transformed in the last 5 years. This is the reality of life in Baghdad now. Barbed wire, concrete barriers and checkpoints dividing one neighborhood from the next. Iraqi police, Iraqi army, American soldiers, militiamen and private security contractors. Men with guns are everywhere. In Saddam Hussein's time, in many neighborhoods, Shias lived next door to Sunnis, Kurds alongside Arabs. But after 5 years of bloodshed, the population map has changed completely. In the last 5 years, concrete blast walls have gone up across this city, dividing communities and, in places, closing roads and highways. This is Qadamir. It used to be a mixed area of Baghdad. Now only Shias live here.
My mother is a Sunni and my father is a Shia. And for the last 40 to 50 years, we never heard of Sunnis or Shiites. We used to live in peace together.
On the opposite side of the river from Qadamir, the neighborhood of Adamir. The two areas are linked by a bridge, but the Iraqi government closed it at the height of the fighting. Both Shia and Sunni used to live in Adamir before. Now it's overwhelmingly Sunni.
There were no differences between us. We're all Muslims, but the occupation has destroyed us and divided us. We want them to leave.
This is now the only way for people to get between Qadamir and another Shia area, Greyat, on the other side of the Tigris. Before the US invasion in 2003, they would have driven there. Now that's not safe. In the last 5 years, this city has been divided as never before. James Bays, Al Jazeera, Baghdad.
In Iraq, April 9th is considered to be a day of liberation from the oppression of the former authoritarian regime. Also on this day, the Iraqi people remember the great martyr and Islamic scholar, Grand Ayatollah Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. May God honor him.
Many Iraqis living in exile expressed optimism that Iraq will witness the security and stability it didn't have during the reign of the former regime, hoping to return soon to the arms of their motherland.
During the reign of Saddam Hussein, which lasted more than 3 decades, Iraqis inside and outside the country have anxiously waited to see an end of a dark era. April 9th, the day the tyrant was toppled, is also the day when Imam Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, may God honor him, was martyred in Baghdad. On April 9, 1980, the Grand Imam al-Sadr was put to death by the former regime of Saddam Hussein. For the past 5 years, April 9th has been marked as a historical day in Iraq.
April 9th is a great day and will always be remembered by the Iraqi people. On this day, many memorable events took place in Iraq. It's also a sad day because it coincides with the death of the great Islamic scholar and thinker Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, who was martyred in 1980. Since then, many crimes have been committed against the various segments of the Iraqi people. And since then, Iraq has been dragged into major catastrophes, including the Iraq-Iran war and the Kuwaiti invasion.
On the 5th anniversary of the fall of the statue in Baghdad, Iraqi nationals in Lebanon are looking forward to returning to their motherland, Iraq.
I'm one of the people who suffered tremendously under the former regime. My older brother was put to death by Saddam. April 9th is a new day in Iraq's history. Unfortunately, the Iraqi people didn't take advantage of this opportunity.
The day the authoritarian regime fell in Baghdad was a good day. However, we were hoping that life would be better and the security situation would be more stable. Once the security situation starts to improve in Iraq, we will return home.
While expressing reservations over the current situation in Iraq, many Lebanese, like many Iraqis, agreed that April 9th was a day of rescue from the dark dungeons where the Iraqi people once lived under the former regime.
When we first heard that Saddam was toppled, we were very glad and cheerful. However, we don't approve of the events that happened after Saddam was ousted. This includes the hostility, the killing, the death, and the destruction.
5 years after the tyrant was ousted, some may express different opinions regarding the events that followed. However, all agree that April 9th was a day of rescue from the rule of the dictator.
Algerian security forces were deployed in the city of Brian, north of Algiers, in anticipation of a new crisis that may emerge after the sectarian conflict, which created strong controversies. To avoid further clashes, a delegation from the Muslim Scholars Association met with the leaders from the two sectarian groups in the city, the Malikiya and the Abbazis. Details with Ahmed Hirzallah.
The Algerian security forces are ready to be deployed in Brian city in northern Algeria in anticipation of future crisis. At the same time, delegations continue to visit the city to contain the crisis. To avoid clashes like the ones that happened recently, a delegation from the Algerian Muslim Scholars Association met with leaders from the two sectarian groups in the city, the Arabs who follow the Maliki religious school, and a group of Amazigh who follow the Abbasi's religious school.
There are some people, though they tend to be a few, who label people as Abbazis or Amazigh or Arabs. All this does not mean the people in the region will enter into a war with one another.
However, it seems that the crisis will not end soon. The Arabs in the city who tend to be Malikis and the group of Amazigh who tend to be Abbazis continue to exchange accusations and blame each other for what has happened.
We were defending ourselves. I challenge anyone who claims that the Amazigh started it.
We, the Malikis, are still defending ourselves. They always attack us in our areas and tell us that Amazigh are better than us.
The residents in the area have high hopes in the security forces amidst the controversy. These images of anti-riot police vehicles are not common in the city of Brian. The Algerian security forces are trying once again to establish security and stability.
لبسط الأمن وإعادة الاستقرار.
أرى حلول تكمن في ميل إنشاء محافظة للشرطة دائمة.
The solution is to establish a permanent police station and a council of respected leaders, which must include educated members.
بعض الطبقة المثقفة.
They are demanding for a council of wise people and an improvement of the security and living conditions. Everyone is longing for peace and tranquility like it used to be before the crisis erupted. Ahmed Hirzallah, Al-Iraqiya, Brian city in Ghirdaya province in northern Algeria.
The announcement issued in London by the French President Nicolas Sarkozy regarding the possibility of increasing his country's military presence in Afghanistan has stirred controversy in Paris. Sarkozy said he supports the initiation of a discussion without reservation in the French Parliament regarding the deployment issue. In a speech before the British Parliament, Sarkozy said he will propose, during the Bucharest summit, that the French forces stationed in Afghanistan be reinforced.
The violence is a daily reoccurrence in Afghanistan, where NATO is leading an international force to restore security. The death toll among NATO forces has reached 217 during 2007. Meanwhile, the conflict continues to rage between the Taliban movement and the Kabul government, which is supported by the more than 70,000 coalition troops. The Afghan president Hamid Karzai is asking for more troops, a request that the French president Nicolas Sarkozy is vowing to meet. Sarkozy said he will propose during the NATO summit in Bucharest to increase his country's troops in Afghanistan.
We will not allow the Taliban movement and Al-Qaeda to return to Kabul. We will not give up, even if a victory is difficult to achieve.
A French source confirmed that Paris is planning to send an additional 1,000 troops to Afghanistan to join the 1,600 soldiers already stationed there. There appears to be a diplomatic confrontation going on over the deployment of international forces in southern Afghanistan, where the Taliban is maintaining a stronghold and where Canada has lost 80 soldiers so far. This means that the Taliban, which was toppled in 2001, is still determined to continue the fighting.
Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and his visiting Senegalese counterpart Abdoulaye Wade discussed promotion of Tehran-Dakar cooperation on major issues concerning the world of Islam. In the meeting held in the northeastern city of Mashhad, President Wade thanked Iran for providing extensive consultation with Senegal as a rotating chair of the Organization of the Islamic Conference. The Senegalese president also announced that the OIC has formed a special council of Muslim world leaders to address the problems facing Muslims. For his part, President Ahmadinejad referred to the growing Tehran-Dakar relations, saying Iran considers no limitation in transferring experiences and technical expertise to all friendly nations, including Senegal. He emphasized that the only solution to the Palestinian crisis is to allow Palestinians decide their own fate. Still in Mashhad, President Ahmadinejad said the era of enemies of the Iranian nation has come to an end. In an address to the families of wartime martyrs, the president said the concern of the Western powers about Iran's nuclear work is but an excuse, since they are the root cause and major sponsors of terrorism themselves. President Ahmadinejad said Iran is the most peace-loving nation in the world and favors justice and human dignity. He added Tehran is ready for dialogue on the common world issues, but there is no point in talks on the absolute rights of the nation. Later in the day, the chief executive inaugurated a large intra-city bus terminal in Mashhad. The transport facility, the biggest in the eastern part of the country, will offer services through 2,000 buses to some 80,000 passengers every day. Iran and Qatar signed an agreement to cooperate on judicial issues. A document sealed by Iran's visiting Justice Minister Ghulam Hossein Ilham and Qatar's state public prosecutor Ali bin Fitiase Al-Meri sets the ground for cooperation on transfer of inmates, extradition of criminals, and judicial cooperation in some other fields. Later, Judiciary Chief Mahmoud Hashemi Shahrudi told a press conference that despite the negative Western propaganda, various aspects of human rights are properly observed in Iran. The chief judge called on representatives of foreign mass media to visit Iran.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.